Anticipation. Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine war live update. It's been a long time since I've been away for the weekend, as many of you will know. And I thought I'd do a live coming back because there's an awful lot to get through in terms of military aid news, of stuff going to Ukraine and concerning Russia as well. So glad that you are all here to hang out together. We will discuss things going on with regard to military equipment, all things Ukraine. Hopefully, once Benny Pie is sorted, he might be in the background sorting out some questions and comments that you guys might have, to put them in front of my face, because the live stream will be flying past and I'll be basically talking at you the whole time. And indeed, he's been responsible for notifications working. These notifications worked. Why did they work? Because actually I decided to do this live stream while driving back from the West Country in the UK, and as a result, I gave YouTube like 4 hours to think about it, and so therefore they worked. But otherwise, you know, they generally, if notifications don't get to you, it might have a lot to do with the fact that I decide like 2 minutes before going live. So that's how it is. Anyway, lots going on around the world. My goodness, you know, Donald Trump's doing Trumpy things and flip-flopping all over the shop. That's fascinating. Would love to talk about that, but won't do that here. Stuff going on with regard to Ukraine in terms of what's going on the front lines. It's really difficult for the Ukrainians. Serhiy Stenenko coming out today saying Ukraine's, and he's, you know, a big supporter of Ukraine, massive fundraiser, a Ukrainian guy that's saying, well, the Ukraine defenses are crumbling. So that's a really kind of negative outlook on how things are going from a Ukrainian themselves. And so, you know, we need to take note of these things. Claims that the southern front line around Zaporizhia could be, or not around Zaporizhia front line around Hyperplay could be a real challenge for Ukraine. It's good to hear that Scruffy Tails was slightly upbeat today in his update on the front lines, which, you know, amounts to Ukraine holding in Pokrovsk. There are obviously challenges there, but it looks like they might be holding to some degree. Somebody here saying it looks like could be, I don't know if it's a troll, but the Pokrovsk cauldron is collapsing, many units caught and some surrendered. Those claims have been going on for a couple of weeks now. Those are generally Russian claims. I assume that there will be Ukrainians that have been captured. We haven't seen too much evidence of that. Normally, the Russians will put that all over the online media spaces if they do, but it seems like they are holding at the moment. But it's likely going to be lost at some point. I can't. I don't know. I'm kind of sixes and sevens about this, but 6, 7. Yeah, I think it's going to be very challenging, but it's rather Bakhmuti in that the Russians are expending huge amounts of troops in trying to take it, and it's been, if anything, you know, if they do win, it might well be a Pyrrhic victory. So that is all happening, and then we're going to speak about this Zelensky meeting with Macron. And we have, of course, and I'm not really going to talk about this, so I will mention it now. And we had the sabotage that took place in Poland, and then the strike on a private Turkish tanker in Ismail, and a village that was evacuated in Romania just across the Danube. Those kind of things. You've heard me talk before about how Russia has a propensity sometimes to overreach, or to make silly decisions, or do things that don't really help them. So if I was to be pro-Russian, right, if I was to be that guy that was just made that comment earlier, if I was to sit there and go, yeah, I'm really gunning for Russia, then you would not want them to do things that galvanize support for Ukraine, and that unite allies of Ukraine, and that make them more likely to commit to bigger things. And so sabotage in Poland strikes me as incredibly stupid for the Russians, that they would much more likely motivate the Polish to be more anti-Russian, and to do things like, right, as a coalition are willing, let's put planes in the skies in Western Ukraine together with the Brits. And, you know, just heard recently that one Russian news outlet suggested that the British were enemy number one, quite out the front as enemy number one. That the US is way down the list, or somewhat down the list, and Brits are seen as the enemy number one. I think we should just embrace that and say, yeah, you think we're the enemy? Well, we'll get together with Poland, and we get together with France and Germany. Germany seem to realize that the Russians are the threat they really are. And I think if we get together, and even if it's not through NATO as some kind of coalition, we should change things up a bit. We should really say, right, you have pushed us too far now. You have got help from North Korea. We have North Korean troops fighting on the continent of Europe. This is not cool. And we are going to start doing things a little bit differently. And we are going to make you, we're going to force you to make decisions and to have red lines that you shouldn't be crossing, rather than always feeling it's on us. So I really think that there's an opportunity there. I don't know that anyone's going to take it, but there's an opportunity that should be taken by allies of Ukraine to really make a bit of a shift in approach, a categorical shift there. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about all that, having just talked about it. I am going to now share with you stuff to do with military aid going to Ukraine. And we're going to first talk about funding before we talk about France. There's a lot going on concerning France. So here we go. But before we do, remember, please remember to like, subscribe and share. It makes a difference. We are slowly creeping up. Not that you guys give a damn, but I think 59,000 subscribers, which is absolutely fabulous. Nothing I'd ever dreamed of, especially talking about geopolitics and military stuff. That wasn't on my agenda, wasn't in my vision of my life in 5 years' time at any point. But hey ho, here we are. And I'm super happy to, well, I'm not happy to be talking to you about this because it means there's a war that has, you know, motivated me to do this. But that aside, you know, thanks for being here. Okay, let's get into it. So now I have moved my screen. We're going to start on funding because funding is kind of the backbone of how Ukraine is able to continue. The European Council's promise. Now, this is huge news. I haven't read the Politico article. I haven't had time. But this is potentially some of the biggest news of the weekend. Yes, or the week so far. It's only Monday. Possibly even bigger than France doing this kind of memorandum. Is Belgium has been seen to, justifiably so, by the way, been seen to be not particularly happy with underwriting the entirety of the Euroclear funding in frozen Russian assets, underwriting that and giving that, or having the EU give that as frozen Russian assets to Ukraine, or not the assets, but use them to underwrite different ways of funding Ukraine. Belgium has kind of vetoed this on account of they don't want to be responsible for the entirety of the risk. And the EC has promised to protect Belgium if Russian assets are used. This is massive. This is what Belgium has been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for. European Commission has offered substantial guarantees for $140 billion loan to Ukraine to reassure Belgium that it will not be left alone in the face of legal or financial consequences for the use of Russian assets. The EC President Ursula von der Leyen has stated that EU countries are prepared to assume the risks of retaliatory measures from Russia for the coming years. The loan is extremely important as the purchase of new SAMP-TNG, Rafale and Swedish Gripen jet directly depends on these funds. Now, we'll get to that because that's interesting in itself. So potentially answers some super important questions. But actually, there are other things like IMF funding, International Monetary Fund funding, being dependent on there being enough liquidity and enough economic activity within Ukraine in order for them to get funding to Ukraine. So, you know, these frozen Russian assets and loans, you know, based on them are the, you know, other funding is contingent upon this going. So it's so important that this goes, not just because how important it would be for Ukraine to get 140 billion euros so it can keep afloat and buy an absolute ton of stuff. And my goodness, I mean, they keep talking about how there's this difference between actual and potential with regard to Ukraine's own defense military industrial complex. And so this money would straight away say, right, we can build all these drones, we can build all these missiles, and even if we can't build them here, we'll build them in Denmark or wherever. Don't give a crap. We're just going to build them and buy them, and we're going to to throw a whole load of stuff at Russia. Now, it couldn't come at a better time if this happens, because they will. And problem is, these sort of things will take a long time. It's like they're not going to get this money next week, but my goodness, they need this money next week. Ukraine is in a predicament, right? So you might have Russian trolls saying, oh, it's all collapsing in Pokrovsk. I don't think it is collapsing in Pokrovsk, but it's freaking difficult. And it's potentially, you know, collapsing along the Zaporizhia front line. So it's insanely hard there. Kupiansk is all right, I think, at the moment. Sumi's looking all right too. There are arguments that certain troops are being drawn away from Kupiansk to bring into Pokrovsk. Which might make it easier in Kupiansk. But nonetheless, things are really difficult, and Ukraine is really, really struggling to get boots on the ground. There are people that are, you know, with the changing laws, and I don't know why this happened. There must have been a good reason for it, but there's a change in the rules such that young people can leave the country and go abroad. And the question is, why are you going to see them back again? Is this a facilitation for, you know, a large wave of effectively refugees leaving the country, which will then exacerbate the problems of needing boots on the ground? So it's really important that funding gets to Ukraine. It's super is. Right, Ukraine is set to receive a 6 billion euro tranche from the EU today. Actually, that happened on the 13th, so this is going about 4 days. Now, according to the Budget Committee Chair, Roxolana the package includes 4.1 billion under the ERA. So those are loans, existing loans underwritten by frozen Russian assets. I don't know what happens to these, because if they suddenly give all of the assets away, or like use the assets to underwrite another 140 billion, what happens to the ERA, which is the way that they have already of giving loans to Ukraine? So the way that happens is that they give loans to Ukraine probably from EU funds, and then when it comes back to Ukraine repaying the EU for those loans, so each month or each year, or whatever it is, they then take the frozen Russian assets profits from the frozen Russian assets, and then use them to underwrite the loans, to pay back the loans. So the money that goes into the EU kind of bank to pay the loans comes from the profits of frozen Russian assets. Does that get affected by the 140 billion? I don't know. 140 billion is actually less than, I think it's 200 plus billion of frozen Russian assets in Euroclear, if I'm correct. And so there might be that some of that is being ring fenced to do this kind of stuff. So the package includes 4.1 billion of those frozen Russian asset loans, and then another 1.9 billion via the Ukraine facility. This support secures current defense and humanitarian spending. In fact, there is a claim, I think I'll come to that anyway. The EU will allocate almost 6 billion euros of direct budget assistance from the ERA loan, and the facility said von der Leyen, quote, "Now is a moment to come with a new impetus to unmask Putin's cynical attempts to buy time and bring to the negotiating table. We must continue to raise the cost of the war for Russia." All absolutely correct there. Now, the EU has given, as mentioned, around about 4 billion to Ukraine in the ERA, so frozen Russian asset profits, is a final tranche of the proposed 18 billion sourced from the earnings of frozen Russian assets. So that's interesting. Is that to say there can be no more, or is that there will be no more because they want to free up all of the rest of it to give wholesale to Ukraine, or use wholesale, not use the profits, but use the actual assets to underwrite further financial tranches to Ukraine? So anyway, there's the EU making that announcement. EU commit. So if that is a final lot from this way of getting funding, ERA to Ukraine, then you know that is a challenge, I guess. Okay. Right. Oops. What am I doing? Sort it out, Piers. Right. The EU Commission maps. So this is now going from, present funding to future funding. EU Commission maps 83.2 billion in Ukraine needs for 2026. And next year, Ukraine needs, according to the EU Commission, or the European Commission, EC, Ukraine needs $83.2 billion, with $59.9 billion allocated to defense. Now, obviously, Ukraine are going to be able to generate some of this themselves, but most of this is going to be needing to come from abroad. The options paper assumes a war concludes in 2026, and yet dedicates 72% of resources to military spending. So much money is needed, which is causing people like Hungary to go, no, So this is Peter Szijjártó, the Hungarian foreign minister, saying that the EU should stop, quote, sending European citizens money to Ukraine in light of Mindichgate. So this is the corruption scandal and this is why corruption scandals are bad news for Ukraine, because it kind of taints Ukraine, and then it gives an excuse for people like Szijjártó to kick up a fuss. It's assured that as long as the Fidesz party is in power, hopefully that won't be for too long, springtime in Hungary will hopefully be enlightened. The money of the Hungarian people will not go to Ukraine. Absolutely no surprise there, but he is a gargantuan moldy toenail. So Zelensky has said it will be a very big loss for the Russians if we can somehow get this money. So he's now talking about the 140 to 160 billion. Well, that'd be dollars, euros is 140 billion, but I don't know. Lots of numbers are thrown around. Whether it will be a loan under the guarantees of other countries or another option, but if we can get this 140 to 60, it will be a big loss for Putin and people from his circle. Freezing money is one thing, and giving it to Ukraine is quite another, not only for weapons. We will produce in Ukraine with this money. We will get some kind of package from Pearl, so that's the expedited equipment from the US, but I don't think it has to come from the US, but anyway, it generally does. Air defense is not only offensive weapons. Not quite sure what that means. We will buy missiles. Air defense means to protect the energy sector, etc. This will be an important signal to Russia. Look, if you continue, you will lose between 35 and 80 billion next year in energy trade, depending on how the sanctions work, and an additional 140 billion in frozen Russian assets. This is an important tool for establishing peace. So again, the frozen Russian assets going to Ukraine is good for many reasons, not least it's a zero-sum game. So it's like our gain is Russia's loss. You won't get this. We get this. And yeah, it's a double whammy. Now, moving off, I'm throwing this in here just because it's to do with funding, but it's more to do with British politics and European military-industrial complex supporting Ukraine. And if you remember, they've put up this, the EU's devised this way of getting, to begin with 150 billion euros, moving up to maybe 800 billion euros of funding to countries inside Europe to either rearm themselves and or rearm Ukraine or arm Ukraine. And this is all in response to what's going on with Russia invading Ukraine. And because that's an awful lot of money, 150 billion going up to 800 billion, obviously all defense contractors and entities are going to be like salivating over this. And that includes a lot of big British entities like BAE Systems. So it's one of the biggest arms manufacturers in the world. They obviously want to be involved in the tenders for those defense contracts. But because the UK left the EU, we can't access them. So what happened is Starmer went out and did some deals, some kind of defense and trade deals with the EU in the hope that that would allow and we were in the understanding that that would indeed allow BAE Systems to and any other British company to put in for these contracts with that European money. Now, from Europe's point of view, they don't want money going out of Europe into British companies, even though we're allied. We came out of the EU, right? And so this is where like Brexiteers will be saying, "Oh, screw Europe," over what I'm just about to tell you. Screw Europe! I told you they're bastards. They're now screwing at the UK over. And Remainers will be like, "Oh, come on, guys, be nice to us." But like someone like myself, I'm a Remainer, but like you've got to understand that Europe doesn't want money leaving the EU. The EU doesn't want money leaving the EU and going to the UK. So if those contracts are going to go to the UK, there needs to be, as far as the EU would see it, serious kickbacks for the EU. And the problem is no one's going to be happy with this. I was always thinking it was going to be very difficult for the UK to get involved in this because the EU would just make those hoops too difficult to jump through, because actually there's plenty of other manufacturers in Europe that can make much of what BAE Systems can make, given time and R&D and whatnot. So the EU is asking the UK to contribute 4 to 6 billion euros plus 150 million euro admin fee. So this is one of the hoops. So the EU have come back to the UK and said, "Oh, by the way, if you want to access this funding to help Ukraine and also get money in your own pockets in return for letting British defence firms bid for up to 50% of the 150 billion euro EU rearmament fund, says the Telegraph. Currently, the UK can only access 35%. France wants a cap kept at 50%. So the EU generally just doesn't want the UK accessing this, at least not without a serious kickback. And it appears that the UK are like obviously going to be really pissed off with this and have said, no, we're not doing that. So Liz Webster here is very sort of pro EU as a British, actually involved in farming. So Starmer's Brexit reset is falling apart. So the attempt to kind of reset with the EU is falling apart. The UK is now ready to walk away from the EU's 150 billion safe defence fund, the centrepiece of Starmer's May reset summit, because Brussels wants Britain to pay to play. That means no access to Europe's biggest defence investment programme since the Cold War, no growth boost for BAE, a Rolls-Royce or British manufacturing, and a public humiliation after Starmer publicly promised new jobs and opportunities from European Defence Corporation. The EU's position is entirely logical. You can't demand market access without financial contributions. But Starmer is politically trapped. He sold Brexit's reset to Britain as a way to rebuild ties without paying in a fantasy that's now blowing up, without paying in. Brussels is asking 4 to 6.5 billion, the same figure leaked last week, and it's a non-negotiable because member states can't justify letting Britain enjoy the benefits without costs. And this is it. I mean, she's being realistic here. The fund is explicitly designed to reduce reliance on US arms, a direction Trump hates, and Starmer's team is terrified of headlines about sending billions to Brussels. The deeper danger, if Britain walks away, it reinforces the image of the UK as unreliable short-term partner. It risks pushing Europe's defence industrial base further away from NATO and the UK, and it exposes the total incoherence of Starmer's foreign policy caught between Russia's rules and Trump's shadow. Now, I wouldn't be so critical of Starmer here. I literally think this is impossible. I just think that, like, well, you know, he was hoping for a reset, but Europe's just not going to play ball because why should they? We're the ones that kind of moved away from Europe. So it's really difficult for the UK here. Foreign policy caught between Brussels rules and Trump's shadow. No wonder von der Leyen refused to meet him, Starmer, at COP30. That's not a scheduling clash. That's a snub. That's how Webster interprets it. So yeah, interesting stuff there. But I think it gives you a kind of understanding of how, like, this is why. I mean, this would never have happened had we not left the EU. And of course, you guys all know I'm a Remainer. But it's just like, it never made any economic sense. The whole thing was never about, it just didn't, it couldn't make economic sense. And the problem is we're now paying for it economically. It was always about immigration, and actually our immigration went up after that. So like that Brexit was an absolute disaster. It's costing us an absolute arm and a leg. And now Europe are like, well, you got to pay to play. And if you ain't going to pay, you can feck off. And the UK is like having to walk away with its tail between its legs. So anyway, you know, there gives you a little bit of understanding of what's going on there. Okay. Thank you so much for your gift of membership, Jonathan. It's not me. You need to thank those who have been so kindly gifting membership. So I really appreciate that. I have a baby slamming on a door over there, or toddler now, standing up, slamming on the door. Oh my goodness. So we're going on to the big news about but great to have you on board, by the way. We're going on to talk about France. So Zelensky and Macron have signed this declaration of intent on Ukraine's cooperation in the acquisition of defense equipment. So remember, we had this with Sweden, and this promised 150-ish Gripens. Probably going to be something like 50 Gripen CDs that come more immediately from Sweden's stocks, I presume, and will start in 2026. So they're going to get Gripens fairly soon, and then 100 Gripen E's that are produced off the line, they will be maybe 3 years down the line. So it's actually going to be some time before they get the Gripen E's. But the Gripen CDs, hopefully, you know, there's no definite details about this, but I assume that every Gripen E that's made new that goes to Sweden, so they've got another 60, is it? They've got 60 Gripen E's that are coming off the production lines that will go to Sweden. I presume they're going to be replacing Gripen CDs. And once they've got trained up on them, those Gripen CDs that Sweden is presently using will go to Ukraine. Now, that's lucky that they're getting these these Gripens, and that there is a way of getting these some Gripens fairly quickly. We've got a similar sort of situation here with France, where Zelensky and Macron have signed this declaration of intent, but it's not like it's a declaration of intent. We intend to. So, you know, essentially, this might be nothing could happen for 5 years, or something could happen next year. You know, there's an awful lot of unknowns here. So, Ukraine has just placed a historic order for 100 Rafale aircraft to equip its army, is a claim here from War Translated, based on a Reuters article talking about, you know, this declaration of intent of Ukraine's cooperation in the acquisition of defense equipment. Now, a bit more detail. Zelensky has said, we signed a declaration of intent with Macron, etc., etc. It's going to involve 100 Rafale F4 aircraft by 2035. So remember, 2035 is 9 years away, 9+ years away. That's obviously not very useful for now. So is this more about the future for Ukraine's combat aviation? Is there a way that they could get some Rafale by France getting newer ones and Ukraine getting some older French ones, like I've just explained with the Gripens? I don't know. I mean, great thing is Gripens, when they do get them, they'll be able to fire things like the Meteor. The same with these Rafale. And also, and this is something I've been waiting for so long. I don't know why it's been so long in being able to happen, but SAMP-T air defense systems are also on the cards. Radars for air defense systems, these ground fire radars, air-to-air missiles, and aerial bombs, so guided glide bombs. Also this year, joint projects between our defense industries will begin. We will jointly produce interceptor drones, good, more of them, work on the development of critical technologies and components that can be integrated into Ukrainian drones. So helping Ukrainian drones be better, ones that are manufactured within Ukraine. So we understand 100 Rafale F4, very powerful French radars. These are ground fire radars that they already have those radars, some of those. In fact, if I could find these ground, I probably should have got this ready. So here we go. So this is October the 7th, 2025. Thales begins full-scale ground fire radar production for France's next generation air defense. So it could be those production ramp up, and that is for the SAMP-T-NG. Oh, that's interesting. So one of the I forget, is it the Arabelle radar? One of the weaknesses for the SAMP-T was thought to be, because the French were saying recently that SAMP-T, the French defense guys saying the SAMP-T has actually had better success than the Patriots in shooting down ballistic missiles. Loads of people saying that's absolute bollocks. That can't be true, because the SAMP-T uses the Arabelle radar, which isn't as good as the Pact 3 radar for the Patriot. But then other people are saying, well, actually, they could be plugging in a SAMP-T to existing radar systems into a network, and therefore you don't actually need a reliance on the Arabelle radar, and they can actually maybe use a SAMP-T using actually the radars that Patriot uses. And so actually it could be the SAMP-T is better. Well, the SAMP-T-NG is this upgraded one that's supposedly even better at shooting down ballistic missiles, and it looks like they're going to be using the ground fire radar, which has already gone, I think, to Ukraine. Previously, I forget how many. Oh, it doesn't say anything. Yes, yeah, I'm pretty sure they've got these, or maybe they've got another one. I forget what the type they've got. Is it? I thought it was ground fire. Someone might have to correct me in the live stream, but I thought that Ukraine had received some French ground fire. If it's not the ground fire, what is it called? Anyway, so they are going to, ground-based. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, if they're going to receive these ground fire radars and the SAMP-T-NG, which it apparently is, so Zelensky confirmed Ukraine will receive an upgraded version of the SAMP-T system, the air defense system, with improved capabilities against ballistic missiles. He called it a crucial asset for Ukraine's defense, but didn't reveal when it would be delivered. And there's a key. So There are two issues with the French. I mean, it's great. Like, this is all great. We want to see loads of this stuff. You know, Ukraine will be able to receive 100 Rafale, very powerful French radars, 8 SAMP-T air defense battery systems with 6 launchers each, 8 times 6. So that's pretty good. It's 48 by my maths. Quote, for some reason, for some, these are technical details, but for us, they're important. Missiles and guided bombs necessary for our defense. So they also get missiles, Aster 30 missiles, I presume, is talking about there. Maybe Meteor, I don't know, but certainly the AASM Hammer guided guide bombs, where last year they made, what was it, 830 for Ukraine in 2024. This year, they're looking at providing 1,000, 2025, 1,000 AASM. AASM are, they do have propulsion, so they're not just kind of bombs with a glide kit. There's a bit of propulsion involved. So, you know, are they bombs type thing? And these are pretty expensive compared to like the FAB and the CAB and the FAB bombs that the Russians use. These are expensive bombs, but they're decent, right? They're going to be arguably much more accurate than the Russian equivalents. Whether they have as much, I mean, the Russians go up to like 3,000, the FAB 3,000, don't they? I don't know whether the AASM Hammer is nearly as powerful, but anyway, good news, they're getting all of this stuff. So the two issues are, when are they going to get this stuff? Well, some of it they're already receiving, and it's probably just going to be continued, but higher quantities. And other things like the SAMP-T, you know, where's that coming from? Are they making it from scratch? And when can they get them? And then the second issue is, who's paying for it? Who's paying for it? French don't have money. Ukrainians don't have money. So this is where that funding from the Euroclear comes in. You suddenly get 140 billion euros, and that's what can pay for it. Or maybe there's some kind of funding from the ERA or from other, you know, other ways, maybe with France borrowing some money from the safe, what we were just talking about, the new EU mechanism to get that stuff to Ukraine, but then that financial burden will be on the French. So there are questions, right? But it's always going to be about you know, time. It's like, that's brilliant, but if they're getting SAMP-Ts in 2023, then that's not helping now. Benny Pie's added, France has prioritized its other customers rather than Ukraine previously, rightly or wrongly, with Ukraine getting the old stuff. But if Ukraine is now a paying customer, perhaps they'll be priority. So the thing, I mean, the thing is, the US has been prioritizing Ukraine somewhat with Patriots, supposedly, you know, Switzerland being pushed down the list, and SAMP-T are going to be looking at this as an opportunity to advertise their kit. They are in direct competition with Patriot, okay, with Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, etc., etc. So SAMP-T are going to be pressuring France to do this kind of stuff as quickly as possible. Now, quite why this hasn't happened, this didn't happen 2 years ago, I don't know. Maybe they're waiting for the SAMP-T NG to come online, really, and they didn't want to build new older SAMP-Ts, and I don't know, stuff to do with the fact that there's a crossover period to this new SAMP-T system. But it's great news. It's great news that France is doing this. Well, but again, like, are they doing this or are they selling this? It's a bit like the US. Like, do we congratulate France, or do we say, well, you're selling this stuff to Ukraine and you've just basically agreed upon a big economic deal? And then the question is, well, where's all this money coming from? If it's coming from France and Europe and the EU, then it's kind of like, yeah. Anyway, this is happening. Macron has said there is no fatigue in Europe from the war in Ukraine, which is good. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it's nice to hear him at least say that. Ukraine will receive 8 SAMP-T air defense systems, which is 48 launches, and that is a historic deal. I mean, that would be phenomenal. But again, you know, when? That's you can't just magic up 8, because these are brand new as well. You know, I'm sure someone could Google how many SAMP-T NG batteries do they make a month, right? And or a year, and you will probably get. In fact, that's a bit of homework for you, because someone could Google that. That'd be great. Okay, so then we have Le Monde saying the promise to sell Rafale fighter jets to Ukraine is a statement with uncertain funding. So the French themselves admitting that actually, yeah, it sounds great, but you know, caveats. Both France and Ukraine are currently experiencing an acute shortage of funds. Yeah, exactly. Even if France were to consider purchasing French weapons for Ukraine, it currently lacks the necessary funds to do so. So even, France would struggle. The draft budget law currently under consideration in Parliament proposes to allocate only 120 million for both civilian and military aid to Ukraine, which is absolutely nothing, comparatively speaking. The implementation of this arms sales project to Ukraine remains entirely dependent on two European funding mechanisms. The first is a safe loan, this is what it's talking about, which provides up to 150 billion euros to countries with defense investment projects, including assistance to Ukraine. And the second, still highly hypothetical mechanism, is 140 billion from frozen Russian assets, the use of which Europeans have not yet been able to agree on. So I think that as good as this French statement is, and the Ukrainian-French agreement here, it is contingent upon the funding. Okay, so, and I would say that the Belgian Euroclear funding is just so freaking important. And yeah, as AF Kaplan LSA says, for OPSEC reasons, perhaps it's not best to know the exact timing of the deliveries of the material from France. Yeah, for sure. But just kind of supposing, or a bit of supposition here, just generally, I don't think you can expect SAMP-T NGs to be like flooding Ukraine anytime soon. And I'm interested in the Rafales, whether France can do what Sweden are looking at doing. So yeah. Benny Pye says, UK and France used to make quite a tag team in the defense sector. UK pulled the wool over USA's eyes with special relationship rules, France flogging the kit to whoever the UK and France could sell it to. I guess that's stuff to do with like these Scalp EG, the Storm Shadow Scalp EG and whatnot. I know Benny Pye looked into that in quite some detail a few months back. So thanks, Benny. Okay, there are no public monthly production numbers for the SAMP-T missile system. Thanks to the pirate for doing a bit of Googling. Appreciate that, mate. Yeah, so I guess there's an awful lot we don't know. Yeah, just looking at some of your comments. Yop saying, to deliver the 100 Rafale, you first need to review all of them. For example, all engines will need to be reviewed by Safran Engines, which hasn't planned a new activity for sure. Depends whether these are, if they're talking about up to 2035, they're talking about new Rafales, I presume. So they wouldn't need to do that. But if there was any of the kind of other way of getting them, then yeah, for sure. Now, this isn't necessarily true. Who's popping? So this is, I was wondering if anyone would mention this. The Rafales got smacked by Pakistan with a flare-up between India early in the year. Now, there was a lot of PR going on at the time, and I think this was more to do with the radar usage. So Pakistan were using, I think, actually the Saab radar planes, weren't they? And it wasn't actually necessary. Basically, you had the Rafales up against the Chinese jets, and a couple of Rafales, or at least one Rafale, but it was seen as Rafales came off second best to the Chinese fighters. But I think that which was immediately what people were shouting. But details started coming out that, because you know that it probably wasn't the case that the Chinese fighters were much better than the Rafales, because shortly after this, India put in a massive order for a bunch more Rafales. So actually, I think the details there were to do with how Pakistan were using radars, and how, I presume, therefore India weren't, and there is how they were being used rather than the standard of the plane itself, as far as I understand it. But that's just going on my memory. Right. Okay. So where were we? Shashank Joshi, talking about this French deal, says a huge deal here. This would be by far the biggest Rafale order anywhere outside France, but how is it compatible financially and logistically with potential order for up to 150 Swedish Gripen? Answer is surely that it isn't. Well, obviously, most countries sort of lump for, well, not necessarily one. No, not necessarily. Actually, you look at UK, for example. We're using F-35s. They have certain missile carrying capabilities. If we want an air-launched nuclear missile, then we need to go for that rather than the Eurofighter. But we use Eurofighters and the F-35s, right? So having two. But I suppose Rafales are quite similar to Gripen. But anyway, they're going for those, and they've obviously got all the F-16s. But I don't think F-16 is a future. I was reading one analysis today that said that really F-16s have never been used that much in like really hardcore combat. They're often, like the history of the F-16s, they've often been used against much less able enemies, and so the F-16 kind of looks much better than maybe it is, although there are still upgrades going on. So people argue about how good the F-16 is compared to, say, the Gripen and Eurofighter and Rafale and whatnot. But anyway, essentially, I think Ukraine is just going to be looking at having Rafales and Gripens, but with F-16s at the moment being that kind of stopgap between the future and looking to go probably European. That would be my guess. I doubt they'd continue going down the F-16 route, but I suppose they could do, and especially since they're going to build the Gripens in Ukraine as well, is the theory after 2033. But anyway, here here's Shashank Joshi from The Economist, the defense correspondent, saying, this is a case that these two aren't compatible. No, I mean, maybe they are pretty similar, but at the end of the day, Ukraine wants to butter up France and butter up, Sweden, and I think it probably makes quite a bit of sense to order both planes and keep both countries really firmly on side. Ukraine will soon deploy the drone wall. I talked about this. I did a breaking news update on this. So Mitch, absolutely. F-16s are better than nothing, and a lot of them exist. Yeah, and then they are capable planes. Don't get me wrong, but it depends, what radars you got on them. And unfortunately, I don't think Ukraine has the best F-16s. Not the best radars on board, even though they were upgraded. I think they're not the best. So it's all about what variants you have with these planes, isn't it? And getting the Gripen E. I don't know about the Rafale F4. I don't know enough about the Rafale actually. So maybe I should go and look at that, but probably not now. Yes. So sorry. Anyway, I was digressing. I have talked to you about this before, so I won't go into crazy details about this, but Ukraine will soon deploy the drone wall air defense system to counter Shahed drones and guided bombs, possibly guided bombs. Business Insider reports that the French firm Atrade has developed an AI guided set of FPV drones that basically you don't have to be trained to use them. You just go and press the on button, and these things that take off 100 and take off, and then go and like take out Shahed and whatever it's flying over. They have 100% success rate in testing, which is absolutely brilliant. Obviously, you can't get better than that, but they're not battle tested, so it'd be very interesting to see them. They're essentially creating a flying minefield that will then take out, just with AI, take out whatever threat it is, and theories that they might be able to take out guided glide bombs. So Ukraine will be the first in the world to check whether one operator can control 100 drones. Now, the operator all they need to know apparently is how to operate the kill switch. AI, I assume, does the rest. DWS-1 system from the French company Atrade, which is being tested in Ukraine, first against Shaheds and later against Carbs, the guided glide bombs. Ukraine could deploy a unique drone wall in a few weeks. Now, that could be imminently happen. It could have already happened, to be perfectly honest. We keep seeing nights of 300 drones getting through, and that needs to stop. So Ukraine is in trouble, right? This war has ground on to a point where Ukraine's energy infrastructure is absolutely shellacked at the moment. They can't produce any gas, having to get gas in from Greece and Russia. While we might not hear all the time about what Russia hits every night, and we talk about how Russia just are aiming for these apartment blocks, that's just simply not accurate. Yes, they do often fly things into apartment blocks, and quite often air defenses or electronic warfare will send these drones and missiles awry, but they are getting 20 to 30 drones through the defenses every night. And you multiply that by 30, and you're looking at what, 600 to 900 drones getting through every month. Just think about the destructive power of that. Each of those has got 90 kilograms of warhead on them. These Shaheds are real bastards, and that's why Zelensky came out recently and said the Shaheds are worse than the missiles. So he admitted that. He said, and that's why I think Ukraine's defense military industrial complex has been unable to produce the missiles and drones that we had been expecting them to produce, at least at the scale we were expecting by this stage. They are still doing a remarkable job, but Ukraine really needs to take these out. They need these air defense systems, of course, but they need these interceptor drones by the bucket load, and they need things like the drone walls, and they need them now. Here we have a Mirage. This is a video whereby there's a bit of PR for the Mirage here. The French Mirage 2005F that we heard. Well, we know that they were given 5 initially. Well, we understand they were given 5 initially. One of them crashed, unfortunately, through a malfunction, and they've since been given maybe 3 more. Not 100% sure. This one's got 6 cruise missiles notched on the cockpit there, which is good news. He's being used to take down cruise missiles. Fantastic. I would have thought they've been in operation for some time, so 6 isn't a huge amount. So I guess that means they're probably being used offensively as well, in order to drop guided glide bombs and other things. I don't know, anti-radiation missiles. But anyway, Mirage, useful bit of kit, and this is a bit like the F-16, a stopgap. I don't know how many France are going to be able to get these, and of course it's all contingent upon training of pilots too. But anyway, that video is out, which is cool. Right, we're going to go on to Germany now. We'll be coming to this later. Cheryl, who asked about what's Mike Pompeo up to with Flamingo. We'll see in a second. So the German government plans to significantly increase military aid to Ukraine in 2026 to over 11.5 billion euros. That's basically $1 billion a month. The funds are to be directed towards artillery, drones, armored vehicles, and Patriot air defense systems, according to NTV. Some European leaders believe Russian leader Putin may win in Ukraine, said the Bundestag member Jürgen Hart. Germany plans to provide about 1 billion per month in military aid and an additional 3 billion in 2026 to defeat Russia. Germany's Minister of Defense Boris Pistorius has announced in a press conference following the Group of 5 meeting that Germany will co-finance another Pearl package. So this is buying stuff from the US and that having that being expedited. Buying stuff, co-finance another Pearl package with at least 150 million euros for Ukraine. That might well be for things like, I don't know, I'm guessing here, but Patriot missiles, and could well be for HIMARS missiles as well. Now, Germany is allocating an additional 40 million euros in winter aid to Ukraine, announced the Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul. Quote, "We're helping to keep homes warm and lit, and to ensure Russia-targeted terror against civilian gas and heating infrastructure does not break the morale of Ukraine's defenders." And that is a real challenge, by the way, for Ukraine at the moment. All of these 20 to 30 drones that are getting through on a nightly basis, they are seeking to break the spirit of the Ukrainians. And you can say, well, the Blitz, British spirit didn't break, and actually sort of brought people together. And that's certainly been the case for Ukraine to date. But almost 4 years of this war, it's a long time, and who knows how Ukrainians will feel with no heat and power over winter, if that is going to end up being the case. So it is really important that Ukraine is able to provide heat and power for its civilian population. The German government has also financed the renovation of a rehabilitation department in the Mykolaiv City Hospital. In total, 21 rooms, including sanitary rooms, corridors, and technical areas, with a total area of 348 square meters, have been renovated to meet modern accessibility standards. Sounds good to me. I just spent 3 days pretty much at Butlins in Minehead. In the Butlins is like this old family, Pontons and Butlins, old school holiday parks. Hi in the UK, but actually, now the accommodations it's decent enough, and you get these little apartments. You can pay more and get these lovely chalets by a lake and whatnot. And it's got this huge indoor venue, as well as these other like venues within this whole big tented area. Like, by tent I mean a structure, like the O2 arena in London. It was really impressive, and actually, it was such a well organized thing. It's called the Shine On Weekender for 90s music, and it's been going now for over 10 years, and it's the first time I've been. I absolutely freaking loved it. But I was in a wheelchair for most of the gig time, so I'd walk myself behind a wheelchair, and then my mate would push me around inside because I used up all my leg skills by that time. And then, but you know, accessibility for me was so important, and it was great. It was really good. Disabled toilets, you get given a red key if you needed it by the guards, by the security people, or everyone was so accommodating and helpful, and you know, from the punters to the staff, and it was just brilliant. And it made you know, I've talked about this before, how Ukraine, when I was in Ukraine and was on a wheelchair because I was ill and my legs stopped working, because for those who don't know, I've got multiple sclerosis. When I went to Ukraine, they are just very poor on accessibility, and they're going to have to, and they are turning it around, but they've got a long way to go from going from arguably sometimes old Soviet era provision in terms of some of the old Soviet train stations. You don't either have a lift up to the platform, so I'm like being almost half carried up by Jonathan Fink while someone lifts a wheelchair, and then to get onto the train, the trains don't sit at the level of the station at the platform as they do in, say, the UK. So you move just straight onto the carriage. There's like 6 foot up to these old Soviet era carriages type thing, and you're having to so I had to be lifted up by Mark and so on and so forth. And it's just like, this is, you know, if you're having so many Ukrainian soldiers injured, they need to sort out accessibility, and they know that, and they have been trying to sort out the trains to have accessibility carriages and stuff. And it's great to see the German government helping here, particularly in Mykolaiv. But that is definitely something that is going to be. In fact, do you know what? I'm going to go from Germany to talk about another thing which kind of fits in with this. This is, I think JR sent me this. This is from the Netherlands. So Ukrainians are taught about driving with a disability in Gelderland, in the Gelderland village of Andelst. A dozen Ukrainians are taking a course on driving with a physical disability. The participants include driving instructors, examiners, and people who are responsible for modifying cars from the government. The intention is that they put the knowledge gained into practice in Ukraine, where more and more people are becoming disabled due to the violence of war. For example, veterans who return wounded from the front must learn to drive safely. The course lasts 2 weeks. So anyway, you know, here you've got support from the Netherlands here in terms of getting disabled drivers, or at least disabled examiners and people who modify stuff. You know, there just needs to be much more provision within Ukraine for disabled veterans, or well, disabled in general. So you know, Germany's involved there, Netherlands involved. Good stuff. Okay. Mike, there's all sorts of yes, I think I do actually. So people talking to me about music, don't get me sidetracked, because I will talk about music till the cows come home. German Aid to Ukraine also says Serhiy, one of the best tank commanders serving in the 5th Heavy Mechanized Brigade, together with his Leopard 1A5 main battle tanks. So these are the Leopard 1s that Ukraine has been given, and quite a few of them, and they've still got some more to come. The question is, because they're lightly armored, yeah, I think some of them may well have been like upgraded with fire control systems. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that would be the case. But you don't want to use them to charge at the Russians and to have a tank on tank battle, possibly, because, well, I don't know. Actually, some of the Russian tanks are of the same era, but they are fairly lightly armored. So they, you know, how are they being used? Is it kind of a second-rate form of artillery? I don't know. But anyway, of which Germany and Netherlands and Denmark have officially supplied at least 103 of these. So he says the Leopard 1A5 is, quote, head and shoulders above any Soviet equipment. So actually, they are better than the same era tanks that the Russians may be using against them, and that will be no doubt because of the upgrades that they've been given in terms of fire control system. Then you put on, you can see on this turret, it's got reactive armor. I know I'm in the way there. Let's get out of the way. So yeah, the ERA, explosive reactive armor on the side there, showing you that they've been at least somewhat upgraded. And yeah, fire control system. What you want is optics. If you can get upgraded optics so that your optics are better than the opposition, then you can see them before they can see you. And if you can see them before they can see you, as long as you've got the comparable range of barrel, then you can shoot them. So it's all about the fire control system, the optics. If you've got thermal imaging, then and they don't, then you've got the advantage. There's the advantage. You can have a lighter tank with crappier armor, but if you see them first, then bang, bang, bang. You can do the damage. Right, Germany's coalition has agreed that all 18-year-old men must report for military screening, according to the Bild. All 18-year-old men are required to undergo a medical examination. If there are not enough volunteers, a lottery will be activated for conscription. Women will also receive a questionnaire to understand their potential willingness to serve. So this is because Germany is planning to increase the army to 260,000 military personnel and 200,000 reservists. Service lasts 6 months, half of which is basic training. Volunteers are ready to be paid about 2,600 euros per month. Germany, like I said to you before, I think is trying to stimulate its economy by going heavy on rearming. And they're doing that because they properly understand that the threat that Russia provides, the threat that it represents to Europe, to Germany. This, I think, shows you how serious Germany is. So not only have we seen $1 billion a month next year for Ukraine, but they're also ramping up their own military equipment and human resources there. They understand. They understand very, very clearly. Okay, so right. I need to look into this. Madap says the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said that, quote, worst suspicions have been confirmed, and that a bomb had damaged the railway track along the route between Warsaw and Lublin near the border with Ukraine. Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see what Poland's formal response is going to be. I know they've sort of got an emergency meeting going on, or on the cards, so we'll see. Okay. Now, earlier today, Ukraine also received. So now we've done France and Germany. I told you there's an awful lot to go through. Earlier today, the other day, this is what, 13th, Ukraine received a promise of more weapons as the 8 Baltic and Nordic nations came together to pledge $500 million. Material will be bought under the prioritized Ukraine requirements. This is a Pearl sold by the US. So 500 million going from the Nordic nations to the US there. Denmark has committed 188 million more to Ukraine through its 28th military aid package. So I presume this is a separate Danish package, funding Ukrainian defense industry directly and securing US weapons through NATO. So it may be part of the Pearl. I don't know. As long as Russia doesn't want peace, we must ensure Ukraine is in the best possible position, said, I presume, the Danish defense minister. Denmark has approved its 28th military aid package. So what else can we learn from this? Funds will support weapons via the Danish model and Pearl, including arms, US arms, and fuel supplies. That's why I included this one. So fuel supplies. So quite often when we think about military aid to Ukraine, you just think about tanks and guns and things that go bang. But of course, the things that go bang can't be used because there's no fuel for them, then they're not very useful. So actually military aid is really important that they also get access to aviation fuel and particular fuels for different vehicles and whatnot. So these are often part of packages, I assume, as well. Okay. Not sure what you're talking about here. I don't know who this person is. Over your head. What? Yeah, it's a flag. It's a flag, mate. That's what's over my head. Feedback loop, says the analyst, talking about Swedish arms manufacturers. They have stated that Ukrainian. I always like a bit of a thread from the analyst. He says Swedish arms manufacturers have stated that Ukrainian use of Swedish systems in the field have saved millions in research and years of time as they learn what they improve and even what they can remove if it becomes unhelpful or redundant. It's similar for almost all the manufacturing companies who provide big and small ticket items. So this is a really interesting collateral to supporting Ukraine. And I think you will lose. What do you mean I will lose? Oh, someone's got rid of no. Oh, here it is. Sorry, it's going so quickly. Everyone's piling in. You will lose. No, I won't. I'm not fighting, you Egypt. And anyway, Russia has lost. It's just like who loses the most. This war is not about winners. I know some people have had a go at me for saying there is no victory. I don't think anyone gets victory in this. If you think Russia will win, if you genuinely think Russia will win, you're such an idiot. You are so thick. Like, no offense, mate, but I know you're a troll. I know you're paid to say stuff like that, but you're a bit thick. You think Russia comes out there smelling of roses? They're international pariahs. Have you seen the state of the Russian budget at the moment, mate? It's a freaking embarrassment. You're an embarrassment if you're standing up for that. Russia has lost. They're not taking Ukraine. They're never going to take the whole of Ukraine. Can't even take the Donbass in 4 years, you prime plonker. Grow up. So, but yeah, it's about who loses the worst or who loses the best. I'm hoping, and I think it will happen, that Ukraine will lose the best and Russia will lose the worst. I mean, goodness me, how many soldiers have been killed because Putin's a megalomaniacal, genocidal dictator? And apparently you seem to support that, which makes you pretty morally bankrupt. So I'd take a look in the mirror and wonder whether you're a decent human being. It sounds to me like you're a bit of a twat. So there you go. Deal with it. Or don't, just carry on twatting about. But, you know, let it be known, Mr. User, whatever your name is, let it be known that I can sleep at night knowing that I'm a morally decent human being because I stand up for what's good and right in the world. And you have a black hole for where your heart is. So, yeah. Nice one. Nice one, mate. So back to the analyst. Yes, Ukraine has been able to accelerate the rate of the pace of change for anyone willing to listen. The conflict has fast-tracked discoveries in operating efficiency and inefficiency, allowing manufacturers to adapt and field changes far more quickly. Just as the war has accelerated changes to the way drones are designed and updated on almost a daily basis as situations and needs change, even a wider industry has been forced to accept that some ideas just aren't practical. Poor decisions cost billions in peacetime. One recent army helicopter program in Europe has seen two countries cancel their orders and another two remove what they had purchased from service. The sales pitch never matched the reality, not just in capabilities, but ludicrous costs and maintenance problems. It took years to find out. So bypassing that agony and frustration in weeks or months is infinitely superior. And Ukraine is willing to help. It's not just about improving what they have. To them, it's their way of thanking and helping us as repayment for what's been supplied. And we all contribute to our own improved defense. Remember, too, that Russia is also learning. It's clearly demonstrating new tactics on land and air, devised new weapons and responses. We can't ignore they too gain from the conflict in other ways. Yes. So, yeah, I think I think, you know, there are real benefits for Ukraine. For all of the manufacturers who are helping Ukraine or providing stuff for Ukraine. There are all sorts of benefits for them because there's nothing better than real world battlefield testing. If you're building, you're doing research and design on a weapon and building it. Like, yeah, you can go and fly it in a desert and try and blow up this thing, but you know, these things getting used by real soldiers trying to take out real enemies. I think, you know, I think it's just so invaluable for these companies. So I think that's unsurprising that the analyst is providing this kind of thread, because these guys must be loving the fact that Ukraine has also said to them, what's it called, the Ukraine battle test or something, where they are inviting these entities to come and test their, or they say, look, you don't test them, we'll test them for you. But if you want to, you know, devise some new innovative weapon system, we'll test it for you, and then you'll get some of the best feedback you could ever hope for. And this is saving them money. This is saving these companies literally years of testing. That's what they're saying here. So yeah. Defense 24 reports that the USA has offered to donate Stryker armored personnel carriers to Poland under the Excess Defense Articles EDA program, these vehicles would become surplus to requirements as 2 National Guard striker brigades are planned to be converted into ISV mounted brigades. So I don't know what will happen here, but it could be that, I mean, someone says USA to Poland and then Poland to Ukraine, or USA to Poland, maybe 5 to 10 years and then sold to Ukraine. I don't, yeah, I who knows? But anyway, Poland could get their hands on some strikers as part of the EDA. It's just a shame they don't go directly to Ukraine. Now, I've reported this. You say Striker was a disaster. I don't think so. And not as far as I... So there was a guy from... I forget what the YouTube channel is called, but there's a veteran American who has a YouTube channel, is one of the main presenters for this military YouTube channel, and he went to Kursk when they were doing the Kursk offensive, and he was with a Striker crew and a Bradley crew, and these guys were really talking up the strike. There was one striker that had taken something like 18 FPV hits and was still going, and it's just like really impressive. So yeah, I'm not sure that's the case. Task and Purpose, that, thank you, that's who it was. Thanks, Chompy. It's Task and Purpose, really interesting. Did a really good video of him going kind of, but you know, pretty much close to the front lines in Kursk. I mean, went into Kursk and was with these guys who were fighting with that equipment, and he was really very positive about strikers. Yeah, but anyway, so we'll see what happens there, I guess. And now, as I've already talked to you about this, but not in a military aid video, I don't think. Volunteer organization Protect Ukraine has bought a Soviet Yak-52 training aircraft. So this is a Dutch organization that has bought a Yak-52 from the UK, actually, for $78,000. And this is just brilliant fundraising. So this is what I think. I know I've mentioned this a number of times. I know the Czech fundraise for and we'll talk about this in a bit because they got 2 for the price of 1, but they fundraise for a Flamingo. But I just think, you know, if you could get for the same price as 1 Flamingo, like 5, 6 of these planes, get them over to Ukraine, then that's just a sustainable return on investment bit of fundraising that you can get, constantly feel good about it, because it's not just use once, blow up, and then, you know, you fundraise for another one. So I don't know, just from the psychology of fundraising, no, it's like 2 sides of the square, right? It's just money that goes into buying stuff. So, you know, you can buy this with that money, or that with that money. Well, if we buy this with that money, then someone else buys that. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not talking about an argument over mutual exclusivity, like it's either this or that. So you're going to get both. I just, from the psychology of fundraising, if you had a unit that says, hey, we've sending you some more photos of the helicopter we're still using to shoot down Shaheds, you're like, yeah, look what we've done. Yeah, that's really cool. And then you just motivates you to keep fundraising and stuff like that. That is all I was saying about that. Anyway, whatever. So yeah, 78,000 euros for this has been handed over to Ukraine. The aircraft has already been used to patrol the airspace of the Odessa region and to intercept drones. So that's absolutely fantastic. Here it is, Dutch charity there. The plane delivered in late October and purchased in the UK by Protect Ukraine has been dedicated to the memory of the pilot Konstantin Kamikaze Oberin, who was known for intercepting Shahed drones. Now, unfortunately, he was a guy who was, well, I think he was in his 60s, probably a bit of a veteran pilot, and he was then flying these things around. And he, unfortunately, I don't know if they shot a drone too close to them, or I don't know, something like that. But he unfortunately passed away. I don't know the details, so that I don't know if that also meant they lost a Yak plane as well. Okay. An anonymous benefactor from the Netherlands, and Dutch again, has armed 6 units of the GUR with rifles as part of an aid package of 350,000 euros, according to Miliciani. So 700 Hatsan MKA 1919 and Mavka MKA 1919 pump action rifles, 130 Holosun enclosed HS 512 CRDs. I mean, I don't know what these are, and Holosun Parallel HS 403B collimator sights, 20,000 rounds of ammunition. Anyway, all that stuff this guy gave on his own. I'd love to be a billionaire. Goodness me, I would love to be Elon Musk. And instead of being like just a complete I don't want to swear, just a douchebag, right? That Elon Musk is. And I know, you know, Starlink and all that, but he doesn't want to anymore. He's well in the sphere of influence of MAGA and Russia. But I'd love to be a billionaire and just go, dudes, here you go. I've got you all of this stuff here. Go for it. Or, you know, those Czech people who like amazingly donated to get together a flamingo. Well, do you know what? I'm going to pay for 20 flamingos on my own. There you go. 20 flamingos, go and blow the crap out of. Anyway, that's what I'd love to do. But it turns out I'm not a billionaire. So that's not happening soon. Lithuania delivered its 7th energy support package to Ukraine. 7,000 glass insulators, obsolete in the Baltic infrastructure, but critical for restoring power lines. The shipments counter Russia's systematic targeting of Ukraine's grid ahead of winter. So that's really cool. Thank you, Lithuania. And then if a peace deal halts fighting in Ukraine, Ukrainian troops could be deployed to help defend the EU's eastern borders. EU Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius told Politico their combat experience would be key in deterring future Russian aggression. This is what I said before, is that the Ukrainians will be training NATO. The Ukrainians will be so experienced and have so much to offer in terms of Europe's and NATO's own expertise and knowledge. And yeah, after months of delay, Montenegro will send troops to NATO's training mission for Ukraine, but only on alliance territory. While the government backs the move, one ruling party lawmaker claims it could endanger relations with Russia. Well, yeah, who cares about that? Obviously he does, or she. Colombia, right, now going back to Gripens and whatnot. Colombia, the country, has decided to acquire 17 Gripen E or Fs, or E and Fs from Saab. So this now joins what? Hungary have got some of the older Gripens. We've got Brazil with newer Gripens. We've got now Ukraine and possibly Canada. I'll come to that in a second. Colombia has decided to acquire 17, with Colombia joining the Gripen family. Minister for Defense Paul Johnson is looking forward to deepening the defense policy cooperation with Colombia. So that's really interesting that they're doing that. And of course, with that means that they necessarily need to build up the manufacturing capacity. So we know, well, we understand that after 2033, there can be some capacity in Ukraine, but actually, you know, at the moment they're trying to expand in both Brazil and Sweden, their manufacturing facilities there. Now, Saab came out just recently, Saab CEO, and confirmed that they are in talks with Ottawa, as in with the Canadian government. Bombardier, who's a manufacturer in Canada, also has experience in, there's a lot of jet manufacturing experience in Canada, as far as I understand. And what they're looking at doing is saying to Canada, or what they are saying to Canada is, look, if you buy Gripens, you can build some of these in Canada, and that could create 10,000 jobs. That's what they've said. And Saab said this could create 10,000 jobs for Canada, and Canada are looking at possibly cancelling. I think they were due to build 88 or buy 88 F-35s off the US. Now, only 16 of which were like obligatory. So I think they now might get to the point where they say, well, we're going to buy 16 or certainly less than 88, fewer than 88 F-35s off the US. Screw you, the US, because you keep talking about us being the 51st state, and Trump is still being horrible over Canada, and they whacked up tariffs even further on Canada due to that advert that went out recently. So then they're like, well, okay, we're going to punish you by buying Gripen, and Saab are going to say that we can build them in Canada, and so happy days, 10,000 jobs, and yeah, good deal for the Canadians, and it could be that they're also the right plane for what they need. Short runways, you know, used to operating in that kind of climate. I don't know. It's just a case of, I think, the US consistently shooting themselves in the foot because of what the tangerine toddler does at the top. Okay, now talking about the US, but with regard to I don't know. Michael Viewchart, who's from Canada, says Pete Hegseth, Pete Hegseth has made this a red line. Your thoughts? I have not heard this. If that's a red line, Canada, well, like, why does the US get to? I mean, this is bullying behavior, right? So, like, the US say, well, this is a red line, you can't buy them. Well, then Canada should say, well, actually, you've already crossed the red line by putting tariffs on us and then putting the tariffs up. So, you stop putting red lines on us. But the problem is, you can talk about what's objectively right, and that you can make an argument that Trump and the US are objectively wrong in the way that they have dealt with Canada. But it doesn't change the fact that the US is a bully, and it's able to be a bully because it is just so much stronger than everyone else economically and militarily. So, what essentially, if you were to sum up the US foreign policy and economic and trade policy over the last 10 months, it's going around the world and nicking everyone else's lunch money. They are the bully on a playground, and they're the bully because they can be the bully. Like, the UK couldn't do what the US is doing. We can go around beating up the rest of the world and nicking their lunch money because we're not powerful enough. Only the US is, really, in a way that they are able to do this and then demand capitulation from other nations. So at the moment, like, we're out, the UK is in an interesting position. We're out the EU, we're a minnow in a sea of sharks, and Keir Starmer's trying to negotiate between the EU and Trump, and everyone is now circling the wagons and trying to be protectionist about their own trade. And someone like the UK is left in the middle of nowhere. We can't be protectionist. We need inward investment from the US, and we need inward investment from the EU, and we need our companies to be investing elsewhere and getting profits from there, etc., etc. But we can't do that if all of you guys are being protectionist, because someone's gone around the world starting up bloody tariff bullying fights. So anyway, the UK is screwed, I think, but essentially Canada as well is on the receiving end here. So it's kind of fairly similar for Canada, which is like, well, the more you stand up to the US, the more the US can punish you. So I think Canada should stand up, but in the understanding that the more they stand up to the US, the more the US will punish them, and the more it will hurt Canadians and Canadian trade. So, okay, if they're going to stand up to that, then they have to mitigate the losses by getting into bed with the EU, the UK, Mexico, Japan, China, even. And these are all things that they are doing to greater or lesser degrees. So Carney knows what he's doing, but he's got to play it carefully. You can't just stick two fingers up directly into the US's face. But you say, well, actually, we're going to buy these jets now. Sorry about that. I think that should be something that they should do. But Trump is retributive, which means he loves retribution. You see of his weaponization of the Department of Justice and his Project 2025 lot. They love retribution. Just going around like whacking everyone out of revenge that has ever done anything against Trump or the Trump administration, past or present. And so you can guarantee that any decision that hurts the US that Canada make, there will be retribution, and that will hurt Canada. Anyway, that's my thoughts. You asked my thoughts. Don't ask my thoughts. You know I go on, bang on and on and on. So Ukraine's corruption scandal rumbles on, with Timur Mindich safely on the run in Israel. One company linked to him is back in the news. Firepoint, makers of the Flamingo missile and some of the best drones, have appointed the former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to its board. Now, Mike Pompeo is not everyone's, he's not everyone's flavor of the day. He's not everyone's soup of the day, is he? But he is someone who has connections, and he is from the Republican side of things. This could be a very clever way of Firepoint getting access to America, access to funding, access to investment, someone with connections that might hold some sway. or some might say Mike Pompeo is a disaster, stay away from him, or whatever. So you can read that in multiple ways. It doesn't surprise me. I think that's probably quite canny, is my opinion there. But he's not the only one. So former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has joined the advisory board of Ukraine's leading defense company, Firepoint. 3 more people will join the board as well. AP Associated Press reports. Firepoint is a leading Ukrainian defense company known for its long-range drones, capable of striking targets deep inside Russia. Firepoint is establishing a new factory in Denmark and bringing prominent industry figures on board. The facility is aimed at addressing the shortage of solid rocket fuel for missiles. The facility aims to expand its operations to produce battle-tested cruise missiles. Firepoint has successfully tested Flamingo missiles on the battlefield at least 4 times, including strikes on an FSB base in Armyansk in Russian-occupied Crimean Peninsula and on targets in the Russian city of Oriel. Yeah, and what you see here, this missile there, this has just been released, that image, that is the Flamingo painted fully pink. This is the one I think has been painted for the fundraisers from Czechia, and they've received, this is called the Gift for Putin, that's a fundraiser name. Czechs funded 1 Flamingo missile and got 2. The manufacturer, because it was so, apparently they fundraised it within 1 day, 500,000. And because they did such a good job, the manufacturers matched donations from the Gift for Putin campaign, doubling the deal to honor late physicist Dana Drabova, a strong supporter of Ukraine. And indeed, so engineers painting a pink flamingo and the inscription Dana 1 on the body of the missile in honor of Czech nuclear physicist Dana Drabova. The funds were raised in 2 days. The same organization financed the delivery of a Black Hawk helicopter for the military intelligence, which is fantastic. That's all really good news. And now they get, so this is good for PR. You know, I wasn't critical, but I was saying I would have raised for a helicopter. They've already got a helicopter. Yeah, there's a good PR opportunity there. So well done to those guys. Absolutely brilliant. Ukraine, so now talking more about Ukrainian indigenous manufacturing and whatnot. Michael, yeah, quite. So Ukraine currently produces approximately 4 million drones per year, probably more than all NATO countries combined, says Bloomberg, reports Bloomberg. By comparison, the US produces approximately 100,000 military drones annually. In 2022, there are only 10 drone manufacturers in Ukraine. Now there are 500, and of course they're going to be producing UAVs, aerial drones, UGVs, ground drones, and USVs, surface drones, as well as torpedo drones. We've just heard being used back in September already. So well done. So yeah, wow, 4 million drones is incredible. Ukraine's launched serial production of the Octopus drone. This is one that Zelensky took to number 10 Downing Street recently because the UK is going to be producing 2,000 of these in cohorts in cooperation with the Ukrainians. And there are, so as it says here, it's designed to counter Shahed drones. The Defense Minister Shmyhal has said the technology has been handed to 3 manufacturers. So apparently there are 3 manufacturers that are making this drone now. I don't know where these 3 are. I presume at least one is in the UK. Maybe more than one's in the UK. Maybe one's in the UK, 2 are in Ukraine or somewhere else. I don't know. With 11 more preparing production. So when you hear about these interceptor drones being manufactured, so we heard about it even with France, this deal with France may involve the Octopus. It may be this drone that they're saying, right, can you guys go away and build this? Octopus is expected to be produced in the number of thousands each month, well, 2,000 from the UK alone. Ukrainian company Global Mark LLC presented a new multi-purpose drone, the Ares P800, at the International Exhibition Space Autonomy, DroneX, AGV, and UMV Expo in London. It can perform reconnaissance and strike missions. Ares P800 is designed for quick launch operation in conditions of active electronic warfare. So that looks pretty sweet. Yeah. Good news there. 548 targets hit in a month. Now, I had not heard of this drone at all. This is a General Chereshnia Air drone. Now, the flagship interceptor drone, it calls it a flagship interceptor drone. It's destroyed 548 targets in the air in a month, and it remains in first place in order of the number of enemy targets shot down in October. These are all Molniya drones that one presumes are getting taken out by this air drone, the Chereshnya Air. Now, apparently, I mean, this looks like a standard FPV drone, to be fair. This was back in June of this year. The armed forces of Ukraine have adopted the General Chereshnya Air interceptor drone, which can hit drones at a considerable height. Just to learn a little bit more about this, General Chereshnya Air has already multiplied by zero hundreds of enemy drones. These are Zala, Orlans, Merlins, Molnias, Supercams, and Lancets, and every down drone equals lives saved. The guys now have 50 anti-aircraft fighter drones and 50 reasons for the enemy not to fly over our positions and peaceful cities. Now, actually, they have loads more than that because this was back in June. But yeah, so the considerable height that they can operate at, so that's going to be a real bonus. And then finally, for this section, this is the Pivdeny Park. They presented their T11 ground drone. There's so many new ground drones coming online at the moment. This is just one of them. I could show you a load more, to be honest. Carries up to 200 kilograms. It's got a range of 45 kilometers and moves at 14 kilometers an hour. I actually saw a British drone, much smaller one, almost like a radio controlled car, like remote controlled car. You know, I had one of those as a kid. I had a Hornet, and it used to go pretty fast, but it wasn't that much bigger than that. And I don't know what it would be used for, delivering really quickly. Just, I don't know if it's used for an FPV. I don't know if I can find evidence of it. No. If anyone can find a link for that, it was a British UGV that was looked pretty cool, to be honest. And it went super fast, but I didn't know what it would be used for. No, just all talking about the octopus there. Anyway, I can't find that now, but if anyone does find that on the socials, probably on Twitter or somewhere, I'll show it. Benny can whack it in the comments, style that one. Anyway, I'm going to now return to talking to you guys before we get into the final section. I told you this is going to be a big one. Sorry, not sorry, but it is what it is. If you're here watching it, then hey, that's cool. You obviously appreciate that. Thank you very much so we haven't finished yet, so more to come, but I just need to do some thanks. Please subscribe, like, and share. Let's get JP to 100K. That would please Oscar particularly, no end. I would go up in his estimations, which, you know, is a good thing. I need to go up in his estimations. I need to be seen as a proper YouTuber. Neil, thank you, by the way, Pirate. Niels Clement, thank you very much. Very generous. 10 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Super kind. Kevin Force, so consistent in your support, mate. I really appreciate that, Kevin. Thank you. Those ATP Geopolitics memberships. Johnny Nevergard, always a pleasure, never a chore, my man. Thank you for your support from Norway. And Michael Vuchar, thank you so much to you, mate. Really appreciate it, Michael. He's already been in the live chats saying a bunch of stuff. Yorkshire Tea Fund, thank you, Paul. I got back today, and even though I was drinking Yorkshire tea while I was away, nothing like a home brewed Yorkshire tea. Yeah, so thanks, mate. Appreciate that. Zeb Carter as well. Thank you for your consistent support. Good to have you on board again, as ever. Thanks, Paul Gilbert, for your continued support, my friend. Stephen Bendel, thanks, mate. And you must be back from Kiev, and we never got to do a live with you in Kiev. I wanted to do a live. Damn it, Janet. Stephen Bendel, give Ukraine all sorts of long-range capabilities. Kinetic sanctions are the best sanctions. Yes, I do get. Yeah, I wake up every morning and get excited about, hopeful about what I'm going to see. If I see massive destruction of oil refineries in Russia, I have this sense of glee, and then I think, God, it's horrible to be like positive over all of those hydrocarbons and pollution going into the atmosphere and the destruction. Anyway, and then I have cognitive dissonance, and then my brain explodes. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that, mate. Richard Bennett gifting 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you, mate. always good to hear from you. Right, a comment from King Raccoon. Per cross direction, according to RBC, Ukrainian defenders are conducting strike and search operations in several areas. I had heard that they were clearing out one area, indeed, and so the idea that Prokopsk is falling, as someone said at the beginning, another one of these. I don't mind having trolls on. It gives an excuse for some of us to have a bit of an argument. I don't mind that. You don't have to get rid of them all. But yeah, Stephen Bendel, regarding philosophy, 5 people tied to a railway track and Putin tied to the side track. Would you pull the lever? Yeah. You wouldn't. I wouldn't need. I'd pull the lever anyway. Just have him. Yeah. So the 5 people on the side track. For those who don't know, this is a famous thought experiment. Like if you had 5 people to save 5 people who are working on a railway track, and there's a trolley coming down, would you pull the lever so the trolley goes to a different track and kills one person? So you're actively killing one, but you're doing that to save 5. So I would, this idea, would you advocate for the assassination of Putin? Yes, I would, because I think that would bring about the saving of many hundreds, many thousands, maybe many tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians going forward. So I know Who's Popping talks about sovereignty here for the EU argument, but yeah, we did have sovereignty. I'm not going to talk about that. That's a favorite topic of mine, though. A special thanks to Sweden as well for the Gripens. Yeah, absolutely, Kaplan. Gripen E can land and start any. So not only do Gripens are they able, because of the air intake being not right at the front underneath the fuselage, underneath the cockpit almost, where the F-16s are, and they suck in what's called FOD, foreign object debris. Gripens have it in a different place, which means they don't suck up stuff so easily, so they can take off from roads more easily, which might be kind of dirty and crappy. The idea is that they don't have many runways in Sweden, so you need to be able to land on roads. And so they have these roads around Sweden they know they can land on, and the Gripens have been designed for that. And they also are designed to operate from these roads. Literally, like they're designed to have a really low maintenance requirements, both in terms of cost and personnel. So very few people are needed to maintain Gripens in the same way that they'd be needed to maintain an F-16. So it can rearm and get fuel in only 10 minutes. And it has the world's best electronic warfare. If I'm correct, it can have its engine on and refuel at the same time. Is that right? And that's one of the advantages. And so it's really quick. And I think that's the case. I wonder if Russia's. So thanks for that, by the way. Who was that? Stefan Hansen. Thank you, mate. Lada Gaga says, I wonder if Russia's ad is softened up enough to air defense, is softened up to enough for offensive aircraft operations in Ukraine. So there was a claim from one of my sources the other day, or one of the sources online, that said that F-16s have been pushing closer to Ukraine, pushing closer to the Russians because of degradation of Russian air defense. Now, there's no verification for that, but I assume that must be the case. They must be able to be a little bit more risky with them, especially around Crimea. Crimea has just been absolutely banjaxed in terms of like radars, Nebo, and all sorts of radars and air defense systems. It's just been horrendous for the Russians down there. So yeah, I'd imagine they must be moving closer. Did you hear that Canada is sending $3 million of winter military clothes? They did that earlier in the war as well. I think they did that right at the beginning of the war, and that's really important. Military clothing is military. It's all equipment. You need stuff. It's just money for stuff. Whether it blows up, whether it flies, whether it goes bang, or whether it goes as you put it on. I'm trying to do sound effects for all the different types of things that money can buy. Ukraine needs it all. Right, breaking news, JP. Get in touch with TG, is that GT? Greg Terry, experience, war maps, and info is incorrect 20 hours ago. Yeah, I saw he did a video on that. I haven't watched it yet, but thanks, Pete Watson. I presume that they are wrong in favor of Ukraine, I would imagine, doing that video. I presume that many people are taking on Russian mapping in and around certain areas. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. If I'm correct in interpreting it that way, then that's good news. But obviously, places further down south in Zaporizhia are struggling. Patrick Carlson says, "I try again. Now we all have to step up and give Ukraine what they need to make sure there will be a Ukraine in 9 years." Absolutely agree with that. Right, we're going to go on to the last section, but just before we do so, thank you very much, James Cowley, for gifting 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Brilliant stuff. Totally appreciate you. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Sound effects I thought they were particularly brilliant, Veronica Dahlqvist. I watched a video once on, so you said maybe make sound effects for movies. Obviously you're being sarcastic, my sound effects were horrendous, but I saw a video of a woman doing sound effects for movies, and she looks at things. So much of the soundscape that you see on movies is just post-production. Like there's no way, especially if they're outside, like, you know, footsteps, you know, people speaking, you know, if they're recording in a bar, all the extras are silent, so you can get good sound from the people speaking, and you've got to add everything in afterwards. Virtually all the sound that you see on, well, so many films is just post-production. And there's this woman whose job is to do all the sound effects, like crunching of feet, and she has all these things around her house which she records at home. She's got like cat litter trays of like different gravels and different stuff for different sound effects, and she's doing the feet with her hands, with shoes with her hands and stuff, and like she makes all these sound effects out of like crazy, well, like weird things. But yeah, that literally is people's jobs to do that. They don't do it just while doing a live on military aid with their mouth though. But there you go. Right, I digress. Let's get back to serious stuff of the rest of the military aid, which is actually the topic of Russia. Now, we are going to start, not over there, we've already done that. We're going to start here. So North Korea has more than halved the volume of artillery ammunition supplies to Russia in 2025. This is very good news for Ukraine. Not only are they taking out lots and lots of artillery pieces, but North Korea had been providing, some people saying like 60-70% of artillery shells for Russia. Now, if they've halved the amount of artillery shells going for North Korea because they've given so many million shells already, then this is brilliant news for Ukraine. This was announced by Vadim Skibitsky, head of the GUR, in an interview with Reuters. The reason was the depletion of ammunition stocks in Pyongyang. Skibitsky noted that in September 2025, no shipments of shells from North Korea were recorded, and in October, only limited deliveries were recorded. At the same time, about half the ammunition turned out to be outdated, that they needed modernization in Russian factories. Really good news. And that's the sort of thing I've said to you before, that North Korea have been a game changer for Russia. They really have changed the game. The game would have been different had North Korea not become involved. Kursk, I think, would have been even more successful for the Russians. Some people debate how successful it was, but whatever you think, it would have been better had the North Koreans not been there. North Koreans have arguably many thousands of people working in Yelabuga, learning how to make Shahid drones and then going back to North Korea to make them there. You've got Koksans and, you know, self-propelled guns and multiple launch rocket systems and all different howitzers and all sorts going to Russia to be used by the Russians. You've got anywhere from like 15,000 troops to maybe many more being used, maybe as many as 4,000 dying, depending on who you listen to. This, you know, if those people and millions and millions and millions and millions of artillery ammunition shells, if they haven't gone to Ukraine, into Russia, then the war would be totally different now. Honestly, I think it would be very different. I think North Korea act to prolong the war, and China likewise. You know, all of these things together, they change the game. Obviously, the game would have been different had North Korea not existed. A new type of Shahid 101 is increasingly being used on frontline zones. This is Serhiy Stenenko. It says that the drone has not yet been fully studied. However, it's already known that it has a warhead weighing 8 to 9 kilograms. So that's double the Lancet, and a range of several hundred kilometers. So it's like an upgraded Lancet, if you like, but a fixed wing drone, not an X-wing shaped drone, and yeah, is being used, and by all accounts is pretty effective. Russia plans to ramp up production of guided aerial bombs to around 120,000 units a year. This to me is, that like Shaheds are a problem, guided glide bombs are a problem. You stop the guided glide bombs are why Russia is able to move their front lines forward, in my opinion. It's largely why Avdiivka fell in the way that it did. Guided glide bombs. Honestly, I'm sure history will look back on certain things and say that's a game changer. These game changer for Russia. Honestly, think that, and something needs to be done about this. So they're looking to produce 120,000 of these a year, including about 500 newer models with extended range, according to Ukrainian HUR, as reported by Reuters. This signals a continued focus on mass airstrike capability in a war against Ukraine. That needs to stop. So they need to not be able to produce them, or Ukraine needs to shoot down the planes. End of. Oh, I've got this one twice. So I'll get rid of that. Okay, I've already talked to you about how Kenya had confirmed more than 200 of its citizens have been recruited to fight for Russia in Ukraine, many through deceptive promises of high-paying support jobs. Authorities say networks are still alive. Then I'll talk to you about an Iraqi guy, and then we basically have Colombians, Cubans, Nepalese, Sri Lankans, Cape Verde Islands. So all these countries, and I say you add all these people up, and you have many thousands of foreigners that are being able to be thrown into the meat grinder by Russia and not have to pay compensation if they die or get injured, not have to worry about the PR of this. And then we hear the latest one. So Tataragami says in November, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs reported that 44 Indian nationals were serving in the Russian army. Front Intelligence Insight obtained and reviewed data that shows the real number is higher. It's not 44. At least 146 citizens have signed contracts. You've got a whole thread on this talking about, offers being attractive, promising salaries of $700 to $1,000 a month in Russia's civilian sector, which is roughly double or in some cases even triple the average income in India. This makes them particularly appealing to individuals from poorer or rural areas. They're going to sign up, get co-opted into the military, and it's a problem. And it's not 44, it's way more than that. And this, by the way, that they know from their observations and research that it's not 44, it's 146, but that's going to be an absolute bare minimum. It's going to be way more than that from all the people they can't get information on. I'm not going to show you all the details on this, but as I said, recruits from India, Iraq, China, and a few other Asian countries could together fill a full motor rifle regiment. Though small in a war this scale, these forces help Russia to ease domestic political and demographic pressure and sustain its assault pace in Ukraine. Yes, I agree. This is honestly, a big problem. Although this is not exhaustive, the actual number of Indian mercenaries is higher. Our team finds these figures far too small to indicate a state-backed program. By contrast, Cuba, with a population more than 120 times smaller than India, has supplied thousands. So just Cuba alone have provided, considerable forces for Russia. Honestly, a massive problem, which, I think needs to be addressed somehow. Now, in Russia, these carbs, so we talked about 120,000 of them being, well, that's what Russia's hoping to build. They are stamped, these carbs are stamped on Chinese and Japanese machines, according to the GUR. The group and independent investigators have identified the Okuma, Japan, and Hezion, China machining centers in the production line of universal planning and correction modules for aerial bombs of tactical missile armament. They discovered that the Brevesnik Central Research Institute manufactures stabilizers for mortar rounds on the Performer Vertical Machining Center of the Taiwanese manufacturer Akira Seiki. And I've identified the Russian companies that supplied the Votkino plant, the manufacturer of Iskanders and Oreshniks, with Chinese KEDE and WNT machines and Taiwanese Ecom VL12I milling machining centers. In other words, these countries or these entities from these countries are aiding the Russian industrial military complex. And there you go. That's enough for me. I'm going to end this before I get back to some of your comments in a second. I just want to say thank you for bearing with me while I went away to enjoy myself watching lots of bands. Here's me and the missus watching Cast. Cast were brilliant. They what is it, 30 years? It's 30th anniversary. 30th anniversary of their All Change album, or the Cast All Change album. Their first album was absolutely phenomenal, and they played the album start to finish. When you got people getting together for the 90s and like reminiscing and like, oh, that rather than playing all their new stuff, they played the whole first album front to back, and then a few others afterwards, and it was absolutely fantastic. They were brilliant. I'm going to play you this. Are you going to be able to hear it? No, I just want to play you this because I freaking loved this, and I'm going to play it to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Deal with it, guys. I'm going to share my screen in a different way so that you can hear this. Now, for any of you, put your hands up if you are from, here's who's popping. Here we go. If you're from Manchester, How Were the Inspiral Carpets? They did one of my favorite songs ever. This song used to be my ringtone. Now, the audio is not good. Some of you might find this a bit painful and a bit high pitched. It's on my mobile phone, and we were further back for this. I was at the front for a couple of the others, and got my wheelchair up there, then stood holding onto the railings. Loved it. This is the Inspiral Carpets and their Saturn 5 song, which I freaking love. The beginning of it. I'm sorry, I'm going to play it to you, and there's nothing you can do.
This has been an absolute pleasure as always. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you.
One more little bit. Anyway, that was me having a jolly good time with his Moog organ. I love a bit of his Clint Boone. That used to be my ringtone. Anyway, I have many videos of, unfortunately for most of that, my finger was over the microphone, but there you go. Right. Thank you. It was all very, very good. Enjoyed it an awful lot. And I enjoyed the 90s grunge scene too. So it's a bit of both. In fact, one of my favorite bands of all time is Buffalo Tom from Boston, who are sort of part of that grunge era, grunge movement. So yeah, Buffalo Tom, I love them. Anyway, thank you to everyone. Let's go and just finish off with some big love to you guys. So just Stephen Bandal again, thank you. Drinking tea from my NAFO ATP mug is 42% better. I told you. And although it sounded like an assertion, I'm sure there is empirical data to say, look, if you get the ATP, and there's a merch store down there, if you buy the ATP NAFO mug, the 42nd Epistemology Battalion, it will be 42% better. Your tea will taste 42% better. This is demonstrably factual. So yeah, thanks, Stephen, for that, and thanks for your support, matey. What else do we have? We have. Thank you very much. Glad you enjoyed the concert. Very civilized. I'm too old to handle the Glasto bogs, especially in the last day. Now, I've been to Glastonbury. I went to Glastonbury 4 times as a whippersnapper. I didn't pay a single time. I used to go under the fence back when the security was worse, and then they tightened it all up. And the last time, the girl bought me my ticket, so I've never paid. But yeah, what was great about there is it was inside, and you got proper toilets, and you got an apartment to go back to. It was the best way of doing a music festival. Honestly amazing. Anyway, especially on the last day, have witnessed total horrors. Saw a portaloo that fell on its door, had to be rolled to release a captive. Now, I went to Reading 1994, Reading 1995, okay, 96. Anyway, one of the years, this weird, like, follow the Messiah, and people going around, and we were part of that. We walked around, and then they started pushing over portaloos, and I swear one of them had someone in it, and it was bad news. Anyway, that was a memory. Gripping it is better than many people think, says Stephen Bendel. Most important, they are good enough against Russian planes. Yes, that's what they were designed for, and that's really important, Stephen. So thank you. They were designed to fight against the very planes that are operating over Ukrainian airspace. Pirate says, we need some love for the Little Whiskey Shop. Mark from the Little Whiskey Shop. I did make an order last week, and so thank you to Mark for getting that sorted. I don't think he's in live chat today, but big love to Mark from the Little Whiskey Shop. I went around Ukraine with him, and thank you to the Pirate who's gifted ATP Geopolitics membership. Thank you. And David L. So good to have you on board, or I never know if that's David I actually. Capital I, gifted 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you, David. You are a total legend. And Mark Bisque in the oh no, I feel really bad. Mark Bisque, let's start to make JP a billionaire. I'll kick it off. Thank you, Mark. No, I'd say I wouldn't like to become a billionaire off the back of other people, but actually that's literally how capitalism works. Like any profit from a capitalistic entity is making a profit by charging more than is necessary for the good. It's literally how capitalism works. So when you see a billionaire, like that is made out of they are made out of extracting money out of selling stuff to people over and above what they need to sell it for. And it always leaves a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Like the obscene wealth that some of these people have been, I mean, not entirely, because there are different ways, and valuing companies can go up, and there's different ways of having wealth, right? And stock markets and investments and all this kind of stuff. But essentially, like at the base of a company making huge profits, like a pharmaceutical company making billions of dollars of profits, like, yeah, you didn't need to charge those billions. Oh, but we need to do R&D. Yeah. But how rich is your CEOs and your owners and anyway? And then you get the arguments back. Well, yeah, but pension schemes are based on the. So yeah, I know these are complicated subjects, but nonetheless, some people have. I just think some people have a little bit too much money. And it's unnecessary. And in fact, it's getting worse. Like the UK and the US, the difference between rich and the poor and the number of billionaires that have been added. I think it's a little bit problematic. But anyway, thank you. I really appreciate you all. Thanks to Mark and all the other super generous people in the live chats, and thank you to all the ways that you support the channel. I really do appreciate you. Thank you for being here and for generating this community. I'm sorry if I was a little bit ranty. I'm not sorry at all against the troll earlier. Don't shut the trolls down straight away. Let's have a little bit of fun initially, because I think that's sometimes useful and enjoyable. It's good to be back. I know it was great to be away, but there were so many things I was looking at saying, I freaking need to talk about this. I need to talk about this. I can't talk about this. Damn it. But yeah, and there's an awful lot of political stuff that's gone on, which is insane. So it is good to be back. Thank you. And thanks to Mitch Mazarov. Appreciate you with your Canadian love, mate. Thanks, JP. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the mods. Thanks to all of you guys. Thanks to Penny Pie who sorted out loads of like geeky stuff. Yeah, troll the trolls. Some of you were saying that in the absence of me releasing lots of videos, you were kind of a bit bored and ended up trolling the trolls. I think that's a good way of doing things. So yeah, do it. Right, that really is enough from me. I know I'm famous for my long goodbyes, but yeah, I probably should go now. Thank you for allowing me to indulge myself by playing a bit of the Inspiral Carpets, and I'm amazed you're still here. Please go and join Discord where the conversations can carry on. And I need, oh my goodness, I need to get hold of Dylan Burns. I definitely do want to do that. I definitely do want to do that. If you are in contact with him, can you get him to reach out to me? I don't know how to reach out to him. I can find out, I guess. But yeah, I definitely want to do that. So if you can facilitate that, that'd be amazing. Was I flipping the bird? No, when? I'm not on purpose. Yeah, happy to. Yes, I do a lot of gesticulations. So take care. Big love. Speak to you tomorrow. Bye. Oh, please like, subscribe, and share.